The things that you have said in the past, Lisbon Treaty, put together by people in power who do not want the ordinary people to read it or understand it. What's your take on that side of things? Why do they want the ordinary people in the dark?
The Lisbon Treaty can be compared with a transport company. It transports power from the voters and the members of the national parliaments to the ministers and the civil servants in Brussels, from what we call from the legislative function to the executive function. But it also moves power from the small member states to the big member states. When Denmark and Ireland joined the EU in 1973, Germany, the biggest country, had 3 times our vote in the council. They were bigger, they had 3 times our vote. That was a balance. Then with the Nice Treaty it was amended to 4 times our size. Still fair enough. But now they will change it to 20 times the strength of the Irish vote in the council. And then it's not fair any longer. Then it's the bigger member states taking over the power in the EU, and I don't think this is healthy.
Do you think there's anybody in a position of power who is looking after the interests of the ordinary people of Europe with this kind of legislation and the method that they're using to put it through?
No, we had a referendum in France where 55% of the voters said no to the constitution. Then we had a referendum in the Netherlands where 62% voted no to the constitution. Then we should have had a referendum in my country, Denmark. It was called upon. The information money was spread. The government party has already used the money. But when they saw the result in France and the Netherlands, then they cancelled the referendum. And with the Lisbon Treaty, they avoided to have a referendum by some tricks, which are now in the High Court in Denmark. They have done everything to avoid the voice of the people. They have done everything to overrule the voice of the people, and they don't respect the no in the Irish referendum. Instead of allowing every one of us to vote once, they will force you to vote twice, and I don't think it's fair.
It's probably not even strictly legal because they're essentially coming back with the exact same document and the same question as last time.
It may be settled in the court. I think it's fair enough to come back if there's a new text. But there's no new text. The text they come with this time is exactly the same. I have made a little competition. Your listeners are very welcome to answer as well. Can you find one example on one single law which can be passed by the Lisbon Treaty as rejected by the Irish, but not by this new Covenants Treaty? You can't find one example, I'm sure, because the texts are identical. The so-called Irish declarations or assurances are not legally binding in the EU. They may be legally binding in other place, but they have nothing to say in the international court for EU. The EU court has a monopoly to decide any interpretation on the EU. So it's nonsense to call it legally binding. It's a trick. It's a trap. The reality is the content is identical. So you are simply asked to vote on exactly the same treaty one time more. Whether it's legal or not, I have seen in the newspapers today that there's a cattle farmer in Ireland who would raise that in the court, so we will have the results from the courts on that.
The Yes camp, they put forward documentation, they give the illusion that things have been resolved, they mention things like conscription. You have said in the past that in your travels, and you're widely travelled and you've spoken on many occasions on this topic, issues like conscription never really come up from the ordinary people.
It came up one time in the debate, and that was on television, in a debate I took part in with Minister Martin, your foreign minister. He raised it. Yes. He's the only one I have heard in the whole of Ireland who raised this question on conscription. Conscription is not part of the Lisbon Treaty. They may decide it unanimously if they want. There's a legal basis for doing that if they want, but only by unanimity. So I don't think conscription should be an argument for anyone in the campaign.
What are the people, you speak to a lot of people, what are people worried about? What are the people in the no side or the doubter side What are they worried about?
I think there's a very big fear in Ireland now because of the economic crisis. And a lot of people I have talked with, they fear that if they vote no, then trade will disappear with the European Union. This is nonsense. The treaty of Lisbon can only be amended with 27 signatures, one from each member state. If there's no signature from Ireland, it can't be implemented, and Ireland will keep its full membership of the European Union as well everyone else. Trade will continue as in the past. Economy will continue in good and bad as in the past. There will be no change. There's one thing I wonder when I listen to the government saying that you have to vote yes to improve the economy, to improve the recovery. How can an economy be improved by surrendering half of your voting size in Brussels? Because this is the core in the treaty. You have today 2% of the vote in the Council. By the Lisbon Treaty, it would be down to 0.8%, less than half. How can you improve the economy by halving the strengths you negotiate with in Brussels? This I don't understand.
There's a tendency as well, I think, on the Yes camp and some of the literature to imply that saying no to Lisbon is saying no to Europe. But a lot of the stuff that I've encountered and people we've spoken to before on the show make it clear that there are ways to move forward with Europe, but not using Lisbon. Saying no to one is not necessarily saying no to the other. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I think pro-Europeans can be in favor of the Lisbon Treaty and against the Lisbon Treaty, because it has nothing to do with Europe. It's not so that the no side are for Asia or for the US. Right. They are Europeans the same way as those who are in favor of the Lisbon Treaty. So I don't think this is a valid argument. I think the valid argument is, do you want a treaty with more transparency in legislation or not? This treaty does not improve transparency. Many more laws will be decided by civil servants in secret rooms in Brussels. Other important question, will it improve democracy? No, the Lisbon Treaty will not. The Lisbon Treaty moves decisions from the open parliaments in Europe, from the Dáil, where everyone can follow the debate, to the corridors in Brussels, 300 secret working groups in the Council, deciding the vast majority of laws after they have been prepared in 3,000 other secret working groups in the Commission. So the open method of taking decisions in most democracies, this is not to be found in the Lisbon Treaty. The Lisbon Treaty is a step away from democracy and transparency instead of what I think we need, a reform with more transparency and more democracy. That's at least what I would propose. And I did it in the convention. I was a member of the convention drafting the treaty with John Gormley. You maybe heard the name. Yes. The Minister of Environment, who was at the time a deputy member of the convention in Brussels. We met once a week and we debated this convention, and we put forward together an alternative with transparency and democracy.